The reason why I think this is important to come to the people in the state of Minnesota as a constitutional amendment as opposed to a statute is because I like to think in terms of the collective wisdom of 200 legislators versus a single district court judge or a small number of Court of Appeals judges or a small number of Supreme Court justices.
5 times in the Senate language that passed this body were the phrases "as prescribed by law," but it's only mentioned once in the conference committee report. And I mentioned that first because in the committee debate, Senator Newman would often say that that is up for future legislatures to describe. When we asked about mail balloting, when we asked about same-day voter registration, when we asked about whether students would be allowed to present IDs. The phrase or the response that Senator Newman often gave was, well, that will be up to future legislatures to describe, and then these phrases, as prescribed by law, would be referenced. That phrase is, as I said, nearly eliminated from the conference committee report.
The Senate got rolled. The Senate got rolled by the House. We ought to be embarrassed that this is what the conference committee report is. That's back before us now. We expect, as an institution, whether you agree or disagree with the Howe Amendment, that when you go to conference committee, you're going to fight. You're going to fight hard because that was an official Senate position, not just on the whole bill, but on that particular amendment.
We have a system of elections in Minnesota that is second to none in the nation. And the process of putting in place a provisional ballot for no good reason, we rejected that when we were implementing the Help America Vote Act in this state in 2003, 2002, whatever year that was. We decided that it was not necessarily because we had a better system. And now here, 10 years later, somebody thinks that we have to go to an inferior system for fraud that doesn't exist.
I think that there is a problem with same-day registration or same-day registration for voters as it involves the vouching system. Same-day registration under this bill is specifically provided for with a provisional ballot, which is a method that is currently an acceptable practice in 44 other states, and specifically was mentioned by Justice Stevens in the Crawford case as a method of, and this is his words, solving the problem with voters coming to the voting place and not having an acceptable form of voter ID for purposes of voting.
What this bill does is it asks a question that is misleading to the population. It asks a very simple question about, should the Constitution be amended to require all voters to present valid photo ID to vote and to require the state to provide free identification to eligible voters? It doesn't talk at all about the provisional balloting system that we know is inherent in this bill. It doesn't talk about what a government-issued photo ID is that they're going to have to produce. It doesn't talk about a lot of things that the voters are going to have to do.
The 60,000 college students in private colleges who may not have the ID that's going to be required to be allowed to vote in their ballot. Now think about this. Students may change their residence several times in a year. They move in, they update their voter registration in their dorm. A month later, they're not getting along with their roommate and they move to a different dorm with a different address. Do they have to go through the process again of getting the government-issued photographic identification
As a former company commander and military leader as a lieutenant colonel, I'd say on its face, providing proof of identification is not burdensome. There is a protocol, we do it for other purposes, and we can do it for this.
There's not a single homeless person in this state who could vote under this bill, under this proposal. Not one. And some people may think they're bums, and they don't count, but they still have the same constitutional rights every one of us does. And a lot higher percentage of the homeless population served in Vietnam and came back scarred. And they deserve the same right to vote you and I do. This bill is not only unworkable, but it is going to disenfranchise tens of thousands of Minnesotans.
Why would we want to consider this? I think the number one reason is to modernize our election system and make sure that we can identify people who are the proper people to vote. The proper citizens of Minnesota should have the right to vote without their voice being disenfranchised by someone who might be considered illegal in some way because they're no longer a citizen or never became a citizen. Not only will it not only modernize the system, it would secure the integrity of the ballot process. And thirdly, it would reduce the potentiality of voter fraud. Those are the three reasons why we have this bill before us.